This year, our spiritual guide through the season of Lent will be the mystic, writer, theologian, Howard Thurman. Now, you may or may not have heard of Howard Thurman before, but we will be using his book, Jesus and the Disinherited, first published in 1949, as a conversation partner over the next 6 weeks. Howard Thurman was born in 1899. The grandson of formerly enslaved people in Florida, he went to Morehouse College, where he studied with John Hope Franklin and Benjamin Mays, and was a classmate of Martin Luther King Sr. He studied with Gandhi in his travels throughout the world, and he became the first chaplain of Rankin Chapel at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Following his tenure at Howard Thurman went to San Francisco to co-found with Alfred Fisk the first major interracial and interdenominational church, the Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples in San Francisco. Following his time in San Francisco, Howard Thurman became the dean of Marsh Chapel at Boston University, and it was from there that he retired. Over 40 years, Howard Thurman published 22 books, including Jesus and the Disinherited. Each week, we will begin to open one of the chapters in this book and have this work of Howard Thurman, set in conversation with the words of Jesus from the Gospel of Matthew. Today, we begin with Jesus, an interpretation, the first chapter in Jesus and the Disinherited, as well as a section of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, most famously known as the Beatitudes. I invite you to listen in these words of Howard Thurman and these words of Jesus for the message that our faith has today for those who, as Howard Thurman says, have their backs against the wall.
Hear now a reading from Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman. I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times that I have heard a sermon on the meaning of religion, of Christianity, to the person who stands with their back against the wall. It is urgent that my meaning be crystal clear. The masses of humans live with their backs constantly against the wall. They are the poor, the disinherited, the dispossessed. What does our religion say to them?
Our gospel reading this morning is from the book of Matthew, chapter 4, verse 23 to chapter 5, verse 12. Jesus traveled throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues. He announced the good news of the kingdom and healed every disease and sickness among the people. News about him spread throughout Syria. People brought to him all those who had various kinds of diseases, those in pain, those possessed by demons, those with epilepsy, and those who were paralyzed, and he healed them. Large crowds followed him from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and from the area beyond the Jordan River. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up a mountain. He sat down, and his disciples came to him. He taught them, saying, "Happy are people who are hopeless, because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Happy are people who grieve, because they will be made glad. Happy are people who are humble, because they will inherit the earth. Happy are people who are hungry and thirsty for righteousness, because they will be fed until they are full. Happy are people who show mercy, because they will receive mercy. Happy are people who have pure hearts, because they will see God. Happy are people who make peace, because they will be called God's children. Happy are people whose lives are harassed because they are righteous, because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And happy are you when people insult you and harass you and speak all kinds of bad and false things about you, all because of me. Be full of joy and be glad, because you have a great reward in heaven. In the same way, people harassed the prophets who came before you. The word of God.